So I've been reflecting on a question that you, Lindsay, asked me earlier this week about whether I was clear on what I want. And I would say oftentimes what I want is a collective, it's a space. And so the question for me is, what does the space want? What does life want? And you were trying to pin me into what I want. And this led me to the topic that I wanted to explore with you, which is the nature of desire. And so the I want is really about desire. And I would like to hear from you how you understand the occurrence of desire. And so it fits into this topic of Eros, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can take desire in any way you want. So take it away.
Oh my gosh. Can you make your question a little more specific?
Yeah.
Or what I can say is I can clarify what I was saying to you because you're repeating it to me doesn't seem like you quite understood what I was
I
communicating.
never understand what you're communicating. That's the whole point.
Well, okay, I can put it like this. I like your perspective of, well, you identify as the field, so if you're gonna check into some kind of sense of forward motion or desire, it seems like for you that's located less as a separate thing inside yourself and more like something distributed that you perceive. Does
Mhm.
that feel accurate?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can definitely contract into I want, I'm hungry, I want food.
Mm-hmm.
Is not the village wants food. Well,
Right.
the village might want food, but there's a contraction.
Or
Uh,
life wants Stephen's body to have food.
yeah, yeah,
You could
yeah,
look at it
exactly.
like
So I
that.
think
Yeah.
there's definitely the attribute of contraction into a one point, like a separation, but that usually has to do with body appetites and logistical elements, quasi survival elements.
Hmm.
So this has to, I'm tired, I need to sleep, I need food, I need sex, I need attention. I mean, these are contractions into the personal, but that to me is always informed by the collective, you know?
Totally. I would say something really similar, which is that kind of like I was just alluding to, your own personal desire is not separate from the field.
Mhm.
So even if you experience something as like your body is hungry, that is life as your body being hungry. Um, but sometimes I feel that you actually have a block or a pattern away from sensing life as the personal,
Mhm.
as the personal being part of the uninterrupted coherency of life,
Yeah.
and maybe perceive of it more as a separation or as less valuable. Does that
Yeah.
resonate?
So
Or
this
no?
is the question of whether the space is enlightened or disassociated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether like I am functioning as a disconnected human being who's isolated myself into a dispassionate location out of psychological self-protection,
Mm-hmm.
or having traveled all the pathways of human being, I've come to a transcendental space in which I now occupy an unconcerned universe, in which the only true needs I have are very fundamental needs of, biological survival. And even those are limited to utilitarian. So I think sometimes your premise is that I'm a disassociated human being in need of deep psychotherapy that you're going to provide to me, which I appreciate, by the way, that you even care enough to provide deep psychotherapy to someone like myself. But from the vantage of the someone like myself is there's a kind of a field awareness that's like, okay, I'll undergo psychotherapy with you. That's interesting and I'm curious about that, but it's not coming from a feeling or a place of there's something wrong. There's just something interesting. and this
Mm-hmm.
is the way you are showing up in my life, and I'm interested and curious about that. So what do you say? Am I disassociated, or am I enlightened, or none of the above?
I mean, we've known each other a long time.
Yeah.
So I don't even know if now I would orient towards you as a psychotherapist or be interested in psychotherapizing you. So that may be historical more than current. I don't
Okay.
know. But it's interesting. I kind of feel like when, let's say there's some ideal where the personality is completely freed
Mhm.
so that life force can move through the being, contract when it's necessary to contract into specificity, broaden out into, the widest spaces, and then all the permutations in between as life wants. Um, Very personal desires would arise in that, and sort of dispassionate, deeply peaceful, states would arise out of that, and everything would arise out of
Mhm.
that. So I guess I get kind of curious when I notice what seems to be like tics or
Mhm.
patterns,
Mhm.
because that seems to me to be a place where, well, you could look at it two ways. Like life itself is just enjoying taking the shape of a pattern in
Mhm.
time,
Mhm.
you know, or you could look at it as a investment of life force into something false and sort of separated and unavailable to the free and creative movement of life force through the
Mhm.
being.
Mhm.
So I kind of like am fascinated by patterns, personality patterns in
Mhm.
people, as described by the Enneagram, or all kinds of things that try to map those patterns.
Mhm.
But regardless of the maps, just whenever you know someone really well, you tend to see uh, shapes that they take that are
Mhm.
consistent.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and I guess it just depends if I relate to that as perfect
Mhm.
or if I relate to that as imperfect.
Yeah, well, perfect would be good. Let's try that. Let's see. No, but I said then the pattern has its counter pattern, which is, could you relate to me as perfect? Like, how would that work for your system? Like, I
That
know
would
how,
not be part of my pattern.
right, I know
Yeah.
how you relate when you see imperfection, right? Which is you try to make it more perfect. So there's an impulse to change it into
Hmm.
something that's more likable, compatible, I don't know, holistic even, more generous. But what if this is perfection? What if you're perfection? What if we're
What if
perfection?
my distaste is
All
perfection
of
and
it.
my desire to change
Yeah.
things is
Yeah. Yeah.
perfection?
Well, that's,
I know.
yeah. So this is, it's for me, the relationship to someone like yourself is the surrender to that perfection, even when it shows up as distaste.
Yeah.
So then that distaste has information.
Yeah.
It has transformation.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
it has curiosity to it, right? It's like, oh, that's really interesting that you could feel such distaste for something that I feel is so inherently whole and beautiful because I'm manifesting it. Yes, you'd like to worship me now.
I feel excited. I'm just catching a wave of something that I'm
Okay.
sensing. Oh my goodness.
You're
Okay.
you're about ready to like um tell me about your devotion to me and the
Right.
deep love that you were experiencing that was beyond the need to change anything about me.
Right. Yes. So what I was saying, and I'm not actually just, well, I'll say it to you again. Um, I've noticed and been touched by a very beautiful quality of yours, where I have felt that you've been devotional towards me, or towards our relationship, or towards our dialogue. But then that's actually a devotion towards the truth or reality or life. Um, as it shows up in me, and perhaps as it shows up in everything and everyone. Of course, I haven't like felt that every moment, no matter what I've done, but it is a quality that I don't experience in a lot of relationships or with a lot of people, and it has been very touching. It almost feels like a transformative force itself. And what I notice is that orientation towards life that is sort of a preemptive yes or a preemptive surrender to whatever might arise as nutritious, as worth meeting, um, is that it creates a quality of one thing. It creates a quality of continuity where there isn't separation. And not just there isn't separation between people, if the actual like matter of reality has a quality of being saturated as opposed to pixelated.
Mhm.
Like it's all an undifferentiated one thing.
Mhm.
Me, you, us, reality. Um, and yeah, I really feel that kind of in my heart center right now as I feel into that quality. And I think I've been deepening into that orientation towards life myself, which is sort of preemptively not separate from anything that might
Mhm.
occur within me, occur inside somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah, so to me, that
Oh,
the nature of microphones, uh,
there you go.
there we go. Um, to me, it's not an active part of my being. It's actually taking the active part, which is the critical part, the part that would rebuff you and everything that you're about and all your attempts to change me, so that I have a protected space that's knowable, that's solid, that's um, strong and penetrable, and deconstructing that mechanism so that there is not a critical response. There's a kind of deep listening, as if I'm listening to myself. And I think
Mhm,
this is where you see that merger quality,
mhm,
is you begin to see that the dialogue isn't from one to another, but within oneself. And this is
mhm,
where it collapses into this unitary quality.
mhm,
And then the so-called criticism, or the so-called attempt to, to change me, becomes the energy you're talking about. Now I'm merged with this energy, which is transformational. It's taking me from form to form to form. And that's kind of an ecstatic quality. It's
mhm,
what we say we want with each other.
mhm.
But when we get to that crossroads, we go, wait a second, that's like too much change, too much energy, too much, I don't know where this is going, right? This is too much
Or too much blah. I don't like this.
too much, I don't like it, but I don't like it is the resistance.
Mhm.
When we were talking about
Or it's
earlier,
just
that
the energy itself of like, ooh,
yeah,
a lot of charge,
yeah, and you start to see
Yeah.
that energy is what is both pushing back from that emptiness, you know, and also creating. It's creating the me, the you, the me and you, the criticism, the acceptance, all of that. These are like, that's the pixelation you're talking about, the way we chop it up into
Mhm,
concepts and we say
mhm.
that's this, and this. But actually, it's none of that. It's really
Yeah.
just energetic movement.
It's interesting you just used the word ecstasy, and that was the word I used last week, trying to describe this like flame-like quality
Mhm.
that I've been feeling inside myself. And exactly that quality is this quality of like a preemptive, already okay with everything.
Mhm.
That'll be constantly tested,
Yeah,
you
because
know?
that moving energy will hit up against what would be um, resistances, conditioning, biological spaces, right? Because
Yeah.
we're embodied. And so we have this sort of historic embodiment of
Not wanting to die.
not wanting to die, like tribalism, male, female, all this kind of stuff that's embodied in us. And so when this moving energy comes through that space, it hits these resistances. And this is where we find out, oh, underneath that resistance, that is with this thing. Okay. Like underneath that resistance is nothing at all. Like there is no structure that I am.
Yeah.
And therefore everything that is, I am.
Yes.
You see, so it's like the totality reveals itself in the emptiness, which is pushed back or resisted in the things that we call reality. And it's, this is the map, not the territory. Territory doesn't have a map.
Yeah.
So now to get back to the point of origin, so now given that description, which I think is really beautiful, and I would say I would describe the way that I am moving through life as the constant attention to that moving energy and the resistances in that, both in myself, like whatever this self is, my personal conditioning, but also in some ways more interesting is the resistance in a group of people, like in a dialogue group or in a town or in a society, because we see these resistances happening. And now the question is, can I meet those resistances in all those forms and shapes? And then what does that evoke? And so when you ask this question, like, what do I want? Going back to this question of desire, that question hits into that space that we're describing. And it's like, well, it's not what I want. It's what is the impetus that life is moving through us.
Yeah.
And now with that as the background, like how would you see desire? Like desire as in passion, desire as in, grasping, not in a negative way, but wanting, the relationship to experience, right? Because a lot of our desire systems are experience. Like, I want to have this experience. I see this beautiful woman. I want to possess her. I want to have her. I want to know that she is mine. I want to know what that feels like and what that is, right? So there's like an experience there. Or I see this wonderful meal in a restaurant and I want to like have that taste and, or I want to have the feeling of power. I want to like run for mayor or something like that. So there's these experiences that we're driven to. I want to have respect. I want to have fame. Go.
I was just checking on our lighting and whatnot.
Oh,
No, but I'm very interested in what you're saying.
okay. How's our lighting doing?
It's fine. It's
Okay.
fine. We need a little work, but
we need a lot of work.
it's okay for now.
Yeah.
Yes. That's a really rich question. When you were talking about like wanting the juicy female, or like, you want to, I forget how you said it. But it feels that one way to address that desire is the moment it's arising, if you don't turn it into a concept, the arising itself is the life force moving. And I think a trap in sort of a certain personality style is to see that as false and therefore cut off the energetic movement, which is just in that moment you're being flushed with appreciation or a quality of yearning, which is happening in the present moment, arising in and of itself as a perfect expression of reality in that moment. There's a different thing when it becomes conceptualized, and then it's like, I need to fulfill a particular image in order to make this feeling stay, or in order to get out of this feeling so that I feel something different.
Mhm.
That's almost a way of bypassing the actual occurrence.
Mhm.
So it kind of depends on what you're calling desire. If you call the desire the occurrence itself, then allowing it and being with it feels extremely healthy.
Mm.
But if you call desire the thing that you're sort of separating yourself from and conceiving of as outside yourself, then that's a different process.
Yeah, so you're saying that desire without an object is inherently the quality.
Yeah.
And when you enter an object into that, what happens? So I feel this quality of um, attraction, desire, wanting, grasping in relation to you, let's just say, okay? Not that I would ever have that experience or anything, but let's say that that happened and I just feel the inherency of that, the beauty of that, really, the
Mhm.
fullness of that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
What induces an action? Because this is what you were asking me, it seems to me. It's like, well, what do you want? Right? So you're not saying what is the flow of qualities, but rather what ones will be held long enough to associate with an object so that you'll go for it. Right? That's what I want. So now I go from this feeling, which let's face it is pretty frequent. Like we all of us move through life and we have these these qualities that show up and we don't need to do anything about them. We see beauty, whether it's a beautiful tree or a mountain, or we see a person that's beautiful, we see a object of art we don't need to do anything with that. But then that happens and there's an action. Like I see this beautiful woman or I see this beautiful mountain and I need to like climb it or have it or buy it or whatever the hell. The woman probably is a little bit clearer, like I need to possess this woman, right? So there's something that happens that is I want. And this is what you were asking me, like, well, Stephen, no, you're not clear about what you want. So what do I do with that flow?
I'm not sure I understand the question. No. I mean, action just happens. There's a kind of action that's just getting out of the way,
Mhm.
and occurrence is happening on its own. And there's some other thing you seem to be
Mhm.
describing that
Mhm.
is like congestion, and then you push, or
Mhm.
so I don't know if see action as separate from anything.
So I had a meeting with a potential dating author who has a system to um, create your connection to your perfect mate.
Mhm.
And he's writing a book and he wants to become like a big spokesperson for how to date. And I told him I used to give talks on relationship that were free and that I would guarantee people would come away with their partner of their lifetime or their money back, but it was free. So it was a perfect guarantee. Nobody ever found anybody, but they didn't have any money in it. But his system was basically like go with every impulse because it's a numbers game.
Hmm.
So I go into a bar, I see an attractive woman, I go say, hi, would you like to date me? I guess I know I've never been on a date in my life, so I don't know about this thing, but you go in there and you go to that woman and she rejects you. That's okay. You go to the next one, you just go on this following the impulse, following the impulse, following the impulse. It's very mechanical. And he followed his system and he found his partner. And so now he's writing a book to tell him. And I said to him, well, like, if you can do that with me, because I'm this like mystic recluse who's like completely unmanageable in relationship. So then I'll endorse your book. So What do you think of that?
I
Should I
think you
just
should
follow?
try
I
it.
should just follow. I was thinking of that.
Yeah.
We could do that as a
Yeah,
podcast.
let's come
He and
back
I
and
could engage and we could see whether it's actually successful.
next
So,
week, I want you to have asked out 6 different women
but ask them out to what though? This is the question.
to
Like,
have tea with
okay,
you or
let's
whatever.
model this out. Okay, I see this attractive woman. That happens to be you, and I say to you, let's go out. Like, what does that even like? What does that mean? Let's go out where and do what?
Well, you could say, I would like to connect with you. Is there anything, would you be willing to do something
Okay,
with
but
me?
this is actually what the experience. That's already moving away from my experience. The experience is I have connected with you. We are in connection, and I'm totally in love with you. Would you like to be married and be with me for the rest of your life and hold my hand when I die? That's really the experience, right?
Is that really the experience or
Yeah.
how you frame it?
No, that's the experience is a unitary occurrence in which form is extruded from that unitary experience.
Well, you could say, I'm feeling our connection. I'm feeling connected to you.
No, but I am connected to you. I mean, I'm in love with you. I'm in a field of love. I mean, this is what I'm saying. It's like so over the top and it appears crazy. And of course, what I've discovered in that process, this is what
Do you feel that with every person?
well, this goes back to what we were talking about. Like, I feel that with every person, and yet there isn't that circumstance that shows an action,
Mhm.
right?
Well, then the true thing would be, I'm in love with everyone, but for some reason I feel to
Well, this is good.
express that with
I
you.
should be taking notes.
I mean, I'm just trying to translate
I
what
think
you're
this would
saying.
work.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to get you together with this dating coach, and then
No, you have to try and say
no, I know,
that
but the
6
two of you
times
could
before
work on
next
you could
week.
see if it works.
Uh-huh.
But it still goes back to the same question of there's the field, we could say, of pixelation, which becomes um, energy, out of which objects occur, in which desire is there, and then what attaches desire to an action? And you're saying, well, action just happens.
What do you think?
Well, I think that goes back to like, what do I want, right?
Mm-hmm.
So unless I'm hungry, or like I need too hot or too cold, or it's raining and I need to shelter, there's not a whole lot of wanting there that is specific to this particular person. There's a lot of directionality, but it always has to do with the relational field. And then the question there is am I apprehending that field accurately?
Mm-hmm.
In
Of
other words,
which you and your personal desires are a part of that field.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, just like in the biggest, broadest scale, I could say I deeply desire world peace, but my capacity to generate that, to manifest that, runs into a lots of um, resistance. So that's like the biggest scale. And then
Mm-hmm.
on the micro scale, there's the occurrence of a relationship, right? And then like I'm in love with you. I'd like to absorb you into this space with me, and you'll be there when I die. How does that seem to you? And it's overwhelming for me to say that
Mm.
because as we talked about earlier, you will show up like a Kali-esque figure to just tear me to shreds. I know that
How do you know that? I
because
don't know that.
every person that there's an attraction to of any kind has the shadow of that.
Yeah, but we've
Everything
already gone through that. So now I'm tamed.
you're tamed.
Or
Well, that is a delusion.
or
That's your statement. I don't know.
Holly's already done her work.
I don't think
So
Holly's ever done. I mean, this is the wheel going around, right?
yeah, well, that's in the various
Yeah.
forms. But I do think that she has a time and a place, a technology,
Yeah.
that she achieves. And you could say within this dialogue,
Mhm.
uh, it's complete for a while on that front.
Well, is it though? I mean, okay, you're tamed. What does that mean?
I don't know that I'm tamed,
Okay,
but
it's
like,
tamed. There's no,
yeah,
that does not seem to be an accurate portrayal of life. Life, it seems to me, like when we come to something which is expansive, we also come to the edge of that. And so we find out expansion is actually very, very tiny.
yeah.
And then we move through the edge of that and it's very, very wide. And then we find it's very, very tiny, right?
Mhm.
So that's not like we're going to get to wide, it just stays wide. And that's the disassociation that we were talking about.
No, but I just more have a perception that there's an epoch that we're currently in that doesn't have the quality of like face scratching,
Mm,
because there is a time, turn for everything.
mm,
Um, Kali will arise when a Kali arises.
mm.
But sometimes it's just as edgy to rest in peacefulness.
Okay, so so for you, how do you move in relation to desire?
I don't like, what do you mean? Be more specific.
Desire arises, right? Grasping, wanting, moving towards something, wanting to have something,
Uh-huh.
whatever that is.
I think I just meet that in the moment as an occurrence.
Yeah, but you don't act on every desire.
Right. I
So
find that the
some,
meeting in the moment metabolizes something, and then there's some perhaps byproduct of that metabolization that is action. You could say that in this
mm,
embodied world, we're always in action.
mhm,
So just the metabolizing leads to the next
mhm,
aspect of the continuing metabolic process.
mhm,
So yeah, through meeting the desire, it either completes itself to just have been sensed and honored,
mm,
or a clear impulse arises to act on something, and then I sense into how that impulse feels. And often it just either has a quality of alignment or it doesn't.
mhm,
And that's where I think the field comes in. Like I sort of vet a desire against a
mhm,
larger field of
mhm,
alignment.
mhm.
And if it seems to be aligned, it's almost like the action needs to happen, or it's not even my choice. Like I would be getting in the way if I were to stop, if I were to not act, you know?
So in your concern for me, and in terms of do I know what I want, then how do you know what you want in that thing you just described in this ongoing field where you're meeting them in the moment, the desire which is either metabolized or not, and then how do you step back from that fray and say, oh, this is what I want? Because you don't really know that until you're in that space itself, right?
Didn't follow that.
Okay. Okay. Where are you now then?
I'm wanting to deal with the lighting.
Okay. We will sometime in the next period of time, we're going to find somebody who knows about this stuff and will be like backstage making it all work.
My
So you can
gosh.
focus.
Um,
Okay, we're going to have a little, I think you have to loosen that thing up. Oh, that's really bright.
I maybe a little bit better though.
Okay.
Is that okay for you?
This is definitely low production value.
I guess I don't even it's so natural
Mhm.
that I don't even separate things in the way you are. So I'm not quite following.
Well,
Yeah.
let's track back to your concern. that I don't know what I want.
Okay,
So,
let
and then
me,
apply that to yourself and tell me how, because I can learn how you know what you want. And tell me how that actually works for you. Like when you say, like, I would imagine a kind of food I want.
mhm.
How does that happen? Like you visualize it, you taste it, you imagine, you go through the act of, like, how do you create the object that then has enough gravitational pull to manifest it? I can understand like the idea of metabolizing in the moment
Mhm.
and then something occurs.
Mhm.
But now we're talking about creating something in the future that I then hold through time and I go, oh, I want this. And there's a whole system of like, um, visualizing. This is like the secret. You visualize that. And I think to some degree you could say reality is malleable.
Well, I'm getting something from your question, and I'm getting a little bit more understanding about why I'm not understanding your
Mm-hmm.
question. Because there's some fundamental orientation that I just have that's different.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit more like the future. I'm perceiving the thing that wants me to live into it.
Okay.
So it's not like something I don't have and I have to like work to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like, again, I'm just sensing into the field where the runway of alignment is already occurring.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to do with so many myriad elements from my history, maybe the way my family celebrated me when I was young. So there's some delight that I have in always having Japanese food because that's what I've always done. And so it just lines up and the energy just goes. It doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
there's not an experience of efforting.
Okay.
So it's kind of like I'm participating in a larger thing occurring and I'm playing my part.
Okay. So, okay, that I get. So then what happens when like you encounter like someone like myself who's, you know, like doesn't have that train of occurrence? I mean, is there some agitation? Do you want that to be the case, or are you just curious, or what?
I'm just
Curious.
curious. I
Okay.
mean, I think we negotiate desire just fine. You
Mm-hmm.
might be like, hey, would you like to go see this show?
Mm-hmm.
Because it sounds interesting to you and you think it might sound interesting to me. And then I say yes or I say no. And then occurrence happens. So I feel like you do this
Mm-hmm.
to a degree. Um, yeah, there's just something where I want to like poke at you a little bit around um
And how's that going?
around like being like just turning the dial ever so slightly
Mm,
towards um a myopic self-centered pleasure
mhm,
for the fun of it.
mhm. Okay. Well, I think I'll work on that with my dating coach on my, what was that, myopic self-centeredness. That might be a better pickup line than like I'm in the field of love with you, like come away with me forever and like hold my hand when I'm dying. That might be too much in the
Yeah,
first meeting,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think probably where my mind was going, oh, we're at time.
Oh, yeah. Looks
Yeah.
like it.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe that's it.
Okay, well, I think that will be a wrap for the question of desire and manifestation. I think um, we delved into it. I don't know if we got anywhere with this.
I
So,
definitely think to be continued.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate everybody joining us. Sorry for the technical issues that we're a work in progress. We're trying to establish a kind of a functional studio so that we can do this kind of thing, but also other people can utilize it, at least in this geographic area. And then also trying to figure out how to edit video without too much trouble so that we can get sort of a better production value so that the production is not in the way of the content. And So bear with us. I appreciate all of you as like early adopters to this platform, this space. I mean, we're trying to create this without the kind of marketing and I don't know, commercialization, to see if there's an organic space that people from around the world can meet and create. So that means that it's inefficient and oftentimes oftentimes clunky. So
Yeah, and I really feel like there's a way that all of your attention on our conversation is a part of it.
absolutely.
And it's almost like, maybe you're getting to see the band practice in the garage before we go big. So you were here at the beginning. So appreciate it. Yeah.
Hopefully a better band will show up once we get the technology worked out. So,
Yeah.
but no, it's true. The space that you each are holding is actually a very important part of the polarity of this expression. And whether you speak or not, the fact that you're attending and that you're feeling and that you're have a connection is actually part of that creation. So I really do appreciate each of you. That was an I statement, wasn't it?
Good
Yeah,
job.
okay, thanks.
Yeah.